What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode here, the Side Guys Football Forum. I'm one of your co-hosts, Devin the Side, joined as always by my good friend, my good buddy, the other half of the Side Guys for Tad the Side. And Tad, coming up to I know obviously we have the extra game in the season now. It's 17 games as opposed to 16 games, so it's not an exact quarter of the season. But after week 4, you could sort of argue that quarter of the season is done. And I mean, that's sort of like a good gauge. I remember Herm Edwards, he used to always talk about when he was head coaching the Jets. He's like, you want to approach the season as a quarter at a time. So you look at the first 4 games, you evaluate after that quarter. You next get to the next 4 games, you evaluate that quarter. Then you sort of make adjustments accordingly throughout the entire season based off your 4 sets of games in each quarter of the season there. So like I said, with the 17, it's sort of like you get an extra game in one of the quarters there, but just I think you get a good idea, like we sort of talked about after these 3-4 weeks. Get a good idea about which teams are, serious contenders, which players are really going to be good for fantasy football. And you also get your good sense of like, okay, these guys, maybe I need to move on for them. Maybe I need to start entertaining some trade offers for them, things along those lines. And also teams that are just not performing that they should be right now. So it's a good sort of gauge mark here after week 4.
So I'm so glad you said that, because there was a great video I saw on this is going to sound contradictory, but I saw on my favorite podcast, they do YouTube as well. Sure. And it was a hilarious video. The difference between 2-1 and 1-2, where 2-1, when the Dolphins fell to, or maybe it was 1-1, it doesn't matter because I'm like 2 weeks behind. And it was Dan Campbell, of course. And the Dan Campbell was like, yeah, you know what? We got to eat our humble pie. We're gonna be all right. And it was 2-1, because this is why, because he had the winning record still, and he's like, yeah, no, we're good. Like, we got to eat our humble pie. We'll be all right. We learned from this. And it was the Chargers who were 1-2 or 0-2 at that point. And Brandon Staley was asked basically the same question of like, hey, how's the team bounce back from this? And Brandon Staley was like, oh yeah, Chad, yeah, okay, yeah. How do you think we feel? And it was just like, oh my Lord, like the difference between the emotions. And it's just one game. It's just one game, but it's that entire, like, kind of like what you said, is like the feel of all these teams are starting to get a feeler for how this season's kind of gonna go. And I mean, you can talk about the Bears here. You can talk about the Buccaneers. You can talk about the Chargers, obviously. Like, a lot of these teams are kind of the brink of, are you going to be good or are you going to be bad? We're starting to get a feel for where they're going to fall on either side.
Yeah, I mean, you look at that Minnesota Chargers game, and then we'll sort of move on, obviously, to our
make it or break
here,
it.
Talk about our start.
Very definition of make it or break it.
Exactly, but it's like you also look at that where it's like the Chargers. I know they won that game, but there's some questionable decisions at the very end of that game where it's like it could have gone in Minnesota's favor. So it's like either of those teams could be 1-2 right now, and the other one would be 0-3. So just the fact that the Chargers were able to sort of like squeak by does not make them like on the right track. There's a lot of things that could have been done correctly.
I'm so with you on that, because that was the weird thing where we were talking last week about like, hey, that's going to be a big game. Like, whoever comes out of that, it's going to feel like, okay, now they're on the right track. The Chargers won that, and still I kind of felt like,
I'm still worried.
I don't know. Like that was that was the rare win without the moral victory too.
Yeah.
Just like 100%. It kind of felt just like the Vikings were, it felt like it totally deflated the Vikings. And I don't know if you saw, but one of the sub headlines, what I call sub headlines, like the right side of ESPN's homepage, all day today, it was Justin Jefferson is already sick of the trade talks. Yeah. Which, by the way, they're not trading Justin Jefferson. Just stop. But so it definitely deflated the Vikings, but didn't really inflate the Chargers either. Like the Chargers, basically, I feel like they were like, whew, okay, can we go back home now? And that's not what you wanted out of that game.
No. I mean, we'll see what happens. They got the Las Vegas Raiders this week, so that's hopefully a bounce back game for them to really like capitalize
with
on that win that they have. So it's a good it's a good game to sort of get your groove back again and sort of like figure out who you are, sort of thing. So yeah, we'll see how that plays out. But just yeah, they escaped with the win. I think that's probably the best way to
Oh,
define that
that's
there.
good.
So um but of course, Ted, like we sort of talked about, I think this is sort of a good gauge as far as like which fantasy players that we like, going forward, which fantasy players are we sort of iffy on, and which fantasy players are we just like, okay, we need to move on from some of these guys because it's just like they're not looking like they can produce at all. So, of course, we head into week 4. We're heading into the weekend here. We need to give you guys our start and sit decisions for week 4. As always, we're not going to give you like your obvious picks, like, start Justin Jefferson. Duh. That's of course you're gonna do that, start, Jalen Hurts. Like those are obvious ones.
While doing research for this, I saw one article be like, start the Philadelphia Eagles defense. So yeah, no shit, Sherlock. Thank you for that advice. Like, and by the way, they're rostered in like 88% of leagues anyway. So it's just, it's whatever. But anyway, so all right, Mer, I have my first start at quarterback. It is Anthony Richardson. He is back. I'm just kidding. He's only gonna last like 3 quarters. That man will never play a complete game in his life.
We'll see. Hopefully, this sort of concussion gives him a little bit of a reality check. That's like, okay, I can't do the things that I was doing in college. I need to sort of tone it back. But
I'm doing the Hawkeye thing. Don't give me hope.
So we'll see exactly what happens there because they got a interesting matchup against the Los Angeles Rams here at LAFB Network. They're very
Aaron Donald
feisty team.
Aaron Donald is going to murder him.
We will see exactly what happens there. But yeah, if you need all the content for pregame coverage and during game and post-game coverage, LAFB Network's got you covered with all of that.
I'm not going to watch a single second of that.
There you go, for sure. But yeah, let's get to our start that sits here, Tad. I'm going to start at the quarterback position. I'm going to go with my pick here. You're going to be a little bit surprised by this one. I remember you said, I think you might have picked up in a start sit episode before. You might have picked up in a waiver wire episode. You were not all that confident in it, but you're like, you sort of went behind it, but I'm going to sort of double down, and I think he's got a good matchup this week. I'm going to go with Russell Wilson versus the Chicago Bears.
You're doing the thing. You're going to do the thing.
Okay, but all right, listen to what I have to say. Listen to what I have to say, okay? So say what you want about the game last week.
I do not endorse this opinion.
Say what you want about the game last weekend. Obviously, it was a complete blowout. The Broncos never has stood a chance in that game. Miami just absolutely ran him out of the stadium. But Wilson threw for 300 passing yards in that game. And here's the crazy thing. He has thrown for 300 passing yards in 2 straight games. Tad, fun fact. The last 2 seasons, Russell Wilson has combined thrown for 2 300-yard passing games. 1 in each season. 1 last year and 1 in 2021 in his final year in Seattle.
That's so sad.
It is very sad, but this is sort of like gives you a little bit of a glimmer of a hope that, maybe he's starting to turn around things here. And like I said, I have to love the matchup here with the Chicago Bears. There's, like we talked about, just so much optimism surrounding them. You'd think they would be a little bit more competitive, but so far, oh my God, talk about another blowout. They had a blowout against the Kansas City Chiefs over the weekend as well. So both teams are sort of like, reeling here. They're looking to gain a victory, but I like Russell Wilson and this Denver Broncos offense to get something going against the Chicago Bears defense. The Chicago Bears are surrendering the 3rd most passing yards in the NFL right now and allowing over 21 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks through 3 weeks here. So I like Russell Wilson. He's been looking not like classic Russell Wilson. I mean, let's not put that out there. But I think if you're looking for a spot start here, you need somebody who could get you some good points. You're streaming an option. If you're playing DFS, he's probably a very cheap option as far as DFS as well. I like this matchup. I think he could be a very sneaky play this week. So I'm going with a start here for Russ.
The reason I'm laughing while you're saying this is I am so sorry. We have 2 very loyal listeners in Matt and Jay. I will not reveal their last names, but yeah, we're going to shit on the Bears tonight. I'm really sorry. But no, I mean, I like it. It's just the thing is like, this is one of those games where, and this is the whole thing I find funny about football media is everybody tries to pretend they know what's going to go on. And they are terrified of these 3 words. I don't know. Like this game is in my opinion, is the biggest wild card of the entire weekend. This could be a very close game. This could end up being one of the best games of the weekend, or I could see either team blowing each other out because both teams are equally bad. And so it's one of those things where it's just, I don't know. But I will say, if you're asking me which quarterback am I more confident in, 100% it's Russell Wilson. Because, after week 1, people were saying, oh, the Sean Payton offense is legit. And, I know I'm bringing up, first take hot topics and stuff like that. But I do think that the Broncos is a more well put together offense, a more well coached offense. Meanwhile, they're just basically like, well, hopefully Justin Fields survives.
Yeah, that's the tough thing there with Chicago. So, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not sure what to expect from this game either. But just like I said, I like the optimism surrounding the Broncos offense just a little bit more compared to what I've seen in Chicago. So that's why I like Russ.
So I don't like him as a start, but it is an interesting thing to monitor because if he does well, he may land on my key waiver wire pickups for next week.
Okay. So sticking to quarterbacks here, Tad, do you like a start or a sit this week?
I mean, thank God this man isn't paid $200 million plus. Guys, it's time. It's time. I'm calling it. It's like, just take him out of the game. We're out. We're done. Joe Burrow, he's out.
Wow.
He's out as a starter. He's out as a starter. I mean, this guy's been struggling. He's only scored over 10 points once in the last 3 weeks. And look, I'm not blaming him. I'm not saying I saw some ridiculous tweet. Oh, God, this is going to sound very millennial of me. I saw a ridiculous tweet on Instagram. It was somebody screenshotted a tweet on Instagram. Anyway, but saying that, like, oh, the Bengals drafting Joe Burrow over Tua was a massive mistake. And then there was a quote tweet on top of it saying, no. Taking Tua over Justin Herbert. Maybe I'm mixing them up. But basically, it was the whole Herbert versus Tua versus Burrow debate. I'm just like, why are we still doing this? They're all good. But that's my entire point is Joe Burrow's good. He is good, but he's so clear. It is so clear. And this happens more often than people think, where there's not in this case, not undisclosed, but there's an injury that's being downplayed that's more severe than you think. And Amir, I don't know about you. I know we were doing the podcast while that game was going on, but I went back and watched some of the, I want to say tape, like I watched the whole game, but I watched more than just highlights. I kind of went back and watched some of the key plays from that game. It is so clear that Joe Herbert is suffering from this calf injury.
Who the hell is Joe Herbert?
Joe Herbert, Jesus Christ.
Who the hell is Joe Herbert?
I just combined Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow. Could you imagine that quarterback? Let's do that for a second.
Jesus Christ.
Imagine Joe Herbert,
Joe
Burrow, Justin Herbert combo. That'd be a Madden 99 instantly. I don't care if he's a first round rookie. Anyway, so Joe Herbert, our new Cincinnati Bengals quarterback.
Cincinnati Chargers. Los Angeles Bengals. Justin Burrow. You want to throw that in there too?
I can do this. Justin Tua Herbert. Oh, fuck. Damn it.
No, you didn't. No.
Justin Herbert Burrow. Fuck, I still messed that up. Damn
it. What are you doing? Like, just... you're trying to combine all three quarterbacks and you're missing one completely both times.
There are obvious reasons why I'm very scared of that pronunciation. Justin Tua Burrow. Okay. The new quarterback of the Bengals would be much better than this current version of Joe Burrow because this current version of Joe Burrow cannot run or be mobile at all. Dude,
that cap is definitely nagging him. Like, I mean, there's no way that, I mean, we saw a little bit of a bounce back against the Rams on Monday night, like you said, but I just still think that there's something off, and it's hard to trust him week in and week out with all this going on for sure.
Well, I'll say this is, you know what watching Joe Burrow right now reminds me of? It's like watching Chad Pennington way back in the 2000s of like a pretty accurate quarterback, but has zero mobility. So like the second he gets pressured, you're screwed. Like you need a very good, albeit or maybe the best offensive line behind that guy to make him succeed, or a very strong running game. And that's another thing is, trust me, I just traded away Joe Mixon off my team. That running game with Cincinnati is also not working because they know if we just pressure Joe Mixon, they have to throw it, and then they can blitz there too. So the whole problem with this is I'm not blaming Joe Burrow because I've been seeing a lot of these grabby headlines like, is Joe Burrow overpaid? Was his mistake? Is Joe Burrow quitting on the game? No, he's not. He's hurt. That's all it is he is hurt. And is Tennessee a great team? No. Their secondary is pretty bad. Their pass rush is actually surprisingly good. If you look at the advanced statistics, they're among the top 10 teams in terms of pressuring the quarterback, which is even more concerning when you talk about Joe Burrow being hurt. But my bottom line is I think Joe Burrow is still good. So don't drop him, because I've also seen some alarmist headlines like that. Like, is it time to drop Joe Burrow?
Extreme. That's too extreme.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Unless you're in my league, in which case, yeah, go ahead and do that. Just leave him alone. But my point being is, until we see him doing a couple things, and these couple things are him running around the pocket, him hitting these deep passes, and here's a big thing. And it's kind of a piggybacking on that last one, driving off that back leg. Because I'll admit, I knew he broke. I knew he hurt his calf. But I look up tonight while I was doing my research, which calf he did hurt. And this was a very interesting thing I learned. It was his right calf.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, I'm not breaking any news, any football fans here. But when you need those deep passes, all that power comes from your back leg. Well, if you don't think about it, all the power starts from your bottom half and brings up. Well, what's the first muscle that it hits coming up from the foot? The calf. So if all the power dissipates from there, you're screwed. So I need to see deep passes, and need to see him mobile in the pocket. I don't want him to rush for 50 yards, because that's not him. But you could just tell the way last week, actually it's still this week, last Monday went. He's not feeling himself. So Joe Burrow is an absolute sit for me.
Yeah, and definitely for anybody who has Joe Herbert rostered, you should sit him too.
Joe Tua Herbert.
He doesn't even exist.
No. If you have Joe Tua Herbert, you do not bench that man. That man is 99 overall across every category in Madden.
Tad, I think that was a sign that you need to keep your takes shorter, because clearly you're just, I don't know where your mind space is right now.
That's a sign that I need to be prepped earlier, because this is way too late for me to be recording.
Oh, gosh. All right, so let's get to the running back position here, Tad. You got to start, or do you got to sit for me?
I have a start for you, and this is a guy that I think that you will finally be happy that I'm kind of back in here.
All right.
This is a guy you backed all offseason.
Okay.
I was not a big believer in him.
Okay.
But you finally convinced me to trade for him.
Okay.
Now, if I wasn't absolutely loaded at receiver on my team, I would be starting him. I think this is finally the week where Javonte Williams breaks out.
There we go. Javonte
Williams, the Broncos running back against the Bears. It's a risky play, I will admit that, because he is yet to really explode for a big game. He's been fine, I think is the best word for him, as a flex option. If you've been starting him as a starting running back, he's been a massive disappointment.
I think the biggest thing is just he hasn't really had that breakout game, like you said, like through 3 weeks of action, depending on the league that you play in. He hasn't broke double-digit points yet. So, I mean, that's sort of sign of just...
He's
sort of a sign of just like where he's going to go, right? So hopefully this matchup, I like this matchup a ton. If he doesn't break out this game, it worries me more about just Sean Payton and utilizing the run game, and just that's going to hinder him all season long. But yeah, this is a very critical matchup. I think he's got a good matchup, so I like this pick a ton, but obviously this is your pick, so you can get into it a little bit more if you want.
Hold on. So I'm gonna see. Here's what I love about you is you go with a more politically neutral speak of this is a big game for him, or this is, such and such. I'm going to go extreme. Remember, is this a make it or break it game?
It could be. I mean, I think honestly though, just with this Broncos offense, like we sort of talked about at the beginning of the episode, is just we need to see more from this offense. And it's just, if we don't see it in this game, it just worries me, because they still have a lot of divisional matchups against tougher teams. So it's that's not going to help you out a ton. So, I mean, just it worries me about the rest of the season then, if they can't get anything going on offense, whether that's a run game, or I picked Russell Wilson as my start at the quarterback position. If that doesn't happen either, then it's just it's hard to trust these playmakers in the Denver offense going forward. Then it's you may see a blip in the radar about them doing well 1 week, but just consistently week over week, I don't think you'll see it. So yeah, honestly, it may be an extremist take, but yeah, this kind of is a make it or break it game for the entire Denver offense.
And I completely agree with that, especially for Javonte Williams. And I'll tell you why is because over the last 2 games, the Bears have allowed their opposing teams to rush for over 100 yards. Now,
There
Amir,
you
I
go.
will admit,
Mhm.
the Bears did keep the Packers under 100 yards. They actually did pretty solid against them. Over under, did the Bears keep the Packers under 60 yards?
No, I think they got over.
I hate you. You're getting good at this game.
Because I think Aaron
You're
Jones got a
ruining this
very
game,
big
man.
run. I think Aaron Jones got a very big run at the very towards the end of that game. That's where he pulled his hamstring or his calf or whatever. And then that's where he's been sort of questionable the last couple of weeks. And so I think that run alone put them over. That's why.
So I promise I've done these calculations 3 times now.
Okay.
My math does check out.
Okay.
It would have been all 3 games this season if the Packers had just gotten 5 more yards. They finished at 95 yards. So this Bears run defense sucks.
Yeah.
And on top of that, they've allowed 5 running backs to score 12 fantasy points or more this season.
Yeah.
This Bears defense is just not good. It sucks. And I think we kind of predicted this, that would be the weaker side of the ball. I think what's kind of screwing the Bears here is I think everyone anticipated the Bears offense being better, that they would be able to like kind of turn in this like high scoring affair. And unfortunately, for whatever reason, offensive line, the Bears, it's so bad, but the Bears just haven't been able to keep up with the other team scoring so much. So I think that Javonte Williams, while he may not like bust out for like 25 points, I think that he'll get above 15 points this week. I'll plant my flag on that prediction.
All right, 15 points at least for Javonte Williams against the Chicago Bears. So yeah, we'll see how that all plays out for sure. I'm gonna go with the sit at the running back position, Tad. Even though this game may be one-sided, I don't think this team will utilize the rushing offense enough. So that's what worries me about Isaiah Pacheco with the Kansas City Chiefs versus the New York Jets.
This is a good set,
so
especially after a blowout. Like
exactly. But just, I'm seeing over, game over game here with Isaiah Pacheco. They're sort of using him a little bit more. He's getting more rushing attempts. He actually scored for the first time last week against the Chicago Bears. So, I mean, but you obviously just talked about how terrible the Chicago Bears defense run game is too. So, I mean, that sort of speaks to that too. But just, you look at this game and I think we're sure that the Jets defense is pretty good. I mean, they were able to sort of stack that side and they're pretty good, obviously. Offense was going to come around, obviously, with Aaron Rodgers, but unfortunately, he's out for the entire season. Now they're running with Zach Wilson there. So I think, unfortunately, the defense will keep them in games, but just like we talked about so many times, if that offense just can't do anything for that defense, they're going to get fatigued. They're going to give up big plays, and they're going to give up a lot of just scoring points overall to the opposing offense. And so, like I said, while Pacheco has been looking good recently, I just don't think that this is a matchup suited for him this week. I bet you the Jets are going to like sort of key in on stopping Pacheco in that rushing game and sort of, which is sort of stupid, but force Patrick Mahomes to beat them when they have a guy like Sauce Gardner, Marcus May on the back end, Jordan Whitehead. They have a pretty good secondary. So I'm thinking that's exactly what they're going to do. They may obviously get to a big enough lead, very similar to what happened against Chicago, and they may get some garbage runs at that time. But also, Tad, Clyde Edwards-Helaire scored last week. So it's like they're not only using Isaiah Pacheco, but they're using Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They're also obviously using Jerick McKinnon too. So I mean, it's like they're using that sort of spread attack. So it's like you don't know who's going to be the beneficiary of that one rushing touchdown once they get close to the goal line. But it's like, yeah, Travis Kelce's healthy now. He's definitely going to get a lot of games. Taylor Swift is going to be at the New York Jets. So you have to believe that.
Shop. No. We are not doing that. No.
You have to believe Travis Kelce is going to be involved a lot. Regardless of whether she was going to be there or not.
You are so lucky I don't know how to kick you out of the stream.
I mean, we've already talked about it, Ted.
I'm just so sick of all this talk.
In this offense is just like, we don't know who's going to emerge. We haven't seen that yet. And so, yeah, the sort of reason that they were able to lose in week 1 was because they didn't have Travis Kelce. They didn't have that go-to weapon. But now that he's back, I think that's going to really move this offense going forward. So it's like, I like them to sort of definitely display a lot of aerial attack in this game. Maybe Isaiah Pacheco will get a little bit. If he gets the touchdown, then obviously that's beneficiary for you. But just, I think that's sort of your saving grace. If he gets that touchdown, that's where he becomes a worthy start for you. But I don't think he does. I think it goes elsewhere. So I'm saying sit by Isaiah Pacheco this week.
Fucking Taylor Swift. God damn it, so sick of it. All right. Anyway, Swifties, she's the best. Subscribe. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. The only thing I want to say was, it's funny. I kind of came up with this comparison while I was reading your notes because it really did remind me of my thought process. God, this was years before me. I was in high school at the time. This reminds me so much of the early 2010s Saints wide receivers, where it's just like, one of them is going to go off, but you have no idea which one it is. Because, like you said, it's Clyde Edwards-Helaire, it's Jerick McKinnon, it's what's the other one? I'm blanking on his name.
Isaiah Pacheco, the guy we're talking about.
Thank you, Isaiah Pacheco. It is almost 11 p.m. here. I'm tired. I've been teaching kids all day. Wonderful kids, by the way. Well, mostly wonderful kids, by the way. But exactly, like they're all very talented in their own ways, but it's you just don't know which one the Chiefs are going to pick, and there's no logic behind which one they're going to pick. At least none that, fantasy managers can determine. So it's just like, do you take that gamble? I say no. Yeah. Especially because the Chiefs, as you said, they're not really that dependent on the run game. That's the difference. Is the Saints were very dependent on that passing game. So you knew for sure one of those receivers was going to go off. So that gamble might pay off. You really don't know if one of those Chiefs running backs is going to go off. So I'm completely with you. Honestly, I think all Chiefs running backs to me are like untouchable at this point.
Interesting. So I'm not going to go that far, but I think just this matchup against the Jets, it sort of worries me about their running game this week. So yeah, sit Isaiah Pacheco. So let's get to the receivers here, Tad. Do you got to start or do you got to sit for me here for the receiver position?
I got to start. I'm excited for this one.
Okay.
It's definitely not just because I just recently traded for him. It's Adam Thielen. I'm a believer. I'm a believer.
Revenge game.
Oh, I didn't trade for him. Like, I'm on the waiver wire. I forgot about that. I'm trying to currently trade him. He's a kicker. But anyway, it's going to work. We're going to work it out. But Adam Thielen, I actually really think that he could be. Now, I don't think he's going to explode to be like a really super dependable wide receiver 2 prospect. But I think that he will stay within the lower end of that realm. And a definitely good flex option moving forward, because a lot of people are saying like, oh, well, it's just because Andy Dalton was in last week. That's why he looked so good. I think there's some truth to that, but I don't think that is the entire truth. Meaning that if you look at his New Orleans stats on Monday night, he had 9 targets. And we talked about this a couple weeks ago on the podcast where, a lot of that wasn't garbage time, but I don't care. With a rookie quarterback, you build that chemistry. That's what garbage time is there for. If you're not there for fantasy, is build that chemistry, kind of get that kind of flow going. And I don't know if you saw was it a touchdown or 2-point conversion? It might have been both. It was either way. He caught either a 2-point conversion or a touchdown. And like just the way you could see, because Thielen kind of adjusts his body because he knew where Bryce Young was going with the ball. Is like you could just tell that chemistry between him and Young was building. So yes, Bryce Young, supposedly, news has not been confirmed as of recording, if Bryce Young is coming back, but all signs are pointing that Bryce Young is coming back. Yes, that is that way, yeah. It's a wild card, but I think it's a bigger wild card than people think. So I think that with the amount of targets that Adam Thielen is getting, and I love me some targets, that he is a very dependable option. And then you look at who he's playing, which is the Vikings. They've led, and for some reason, 5 is just a magical number with how much points the opposing team has let up. They've let at least 5. I looked this stat up to confirm it. They've let at least 5 receivers let up 16 points. At least 16 points. 5 receivers. It's week 4. Yeah. That secondary is goddamn terrible. I don't know who. I'm trying to remember what number. I think it's 21. 21 of the Vikings, while I was watching that Chargers game, was like this the entire game. And for our podcast listeners, it's like his arm, like what's a good comparison? Like his arms in the air, like waving it around. Like he looked like he was on a goddamn roller coaster. It was insane. Yeah. And my favorite part is every time he's looking at the ref, like, come on, man. I'm like, he barely touched you, dude.
Yeah, I know.
Like that secondary is bad. And let's not forget him, revenge game.
Yep, that's how I started out there. Revenge game makes a difference. No, but I brought up Adam Thielen before. I think I had it as a waiver wire pick in one of our recent episodes. That I think I just very much like that
low key. Thank you for that, because that's what finally I was like, all right, if Amur's good with him, I'm gonna go for it. Because I was kind of on the border of like, do I go for it? Do I go for it? Then we recorded the episode, and you convinced me. I was like, I'm gonna go for it. I got him.
I think the biggest thing is just like, yeah, it definitely helped that Andy Dalton was going to him a lot more. But Bryce Young, exactly, that chemistry is building. I think he knows that he can sort of trust Adam Thielen. Like I said, he's a veteran receiver. He's been there. He's done it, sort of thing. So that's a relationship that I think is steadily going to grow throughout the entire season. So yeah, I like that pickup as well. And yeah, I think you can't overestimate the fact that it's a revenge game. Like they let him go. They moved on to the younger guy and Jordan Addison. So yeah, this is very much like, nope, I still had a lot of juice in the tank. You let me walk. That's not cool, man. So it's like,
here's the thing: if it was a revenge game, let's say, like flip it. If this was like Amari Cooper on on this team going against the Cowboys, even though it's a revenge game, I'm like, don't fall for that trap. I know it's a revenge game, but Dallas is too good. That secondary is really, really bad. That might be the worst secondary in the NFL. I know they're not ranked as the worst secondary, but by the end of the season, they might be.
They might be there. They might be there for sure.
Where's Harrison Smith now?
He's still in Minnesota.
Oof, fall from grace.
Well, I don't think he's covering the receivers, right? He's playing safety, so it's the deep end, right? So,
what do you think the job of a safety is?
Yeah, I understand that, but still primarily on the corner, though, depending on the coverage. So,
no, for sure, it's primarily on the corner. I'm not saying that, but no, those corners are terrible.
Yeah. For sure. I'm going to get to my sit here, Tad. You may be a little bit surprised with this one because he was possibly a number one pick. Sorry, not number one, but first round pick by a lot of people in fantasy drafts. I probably lean more towards a second round pick more overall, but just regardless, still a very high round draft pick. And I'm going to say sit Garrett Wilson versus
he's done. He's done.
Yeah, and it's not because of Garrett Wilson. I mean, obviously we love Garrett Wilson. He's got immense talent. I mean, he definitely displayed it. Unfortunately, though, the swap from Aaron Rodgers to Zach Wilson is paying a huge, it's just dropping off his fantasy stock completely. I mean, it was skyrocketing when the news happened that Aaron Rodgers was traded to the New York Jets. It was like, okay, everybody go out and get some shares in Garrett Wilson. Soon as that injury happened, it was like, okay, now what do we do? And you'll look at his stat line, Ted, and he had a 68-yard touchdown against the Dallas Cowboys. But outside of that, this is his numbers through 3 weeks, Tad. So he has 21 targets, 11 receptions, 97 receiving yards, and 1 touchdown only. So, I mean...
I'm going to do that math real quick. 11 receptions, 97 yards?
97 receiving yards, yeah. So it's barely 10 yards of reception. Maybe a little bit more than that, but I mean, it's just it's not good. And just like I said, you take away that long reception that he had against Dallas, where they had a broken down defense, they allowed that to happen essentially. But just outside of that, I mean, just this guy has just unfortunately not been reliable in this offense because of the quarterback play. I mean, just right now, it seems like head coach Robert Saleh is very much convinced that, you know what, Zach Wilson is our starter for the foreseeable future. But I mean, just what I've seen, Dad, through 2 weeks, I know he sort of looked okay in that week 1 game against the Buffalo Bills, but also the Buffalo Bills sort of gifted in that game a little bit too. But just overall, I'm not liking what I'm seeing from the offense. It's hard to trust anybody in that offense. It's very similar to how we feel about Denver, where we're sort of on the cusp. With Jets, I'm over the edge. I'm not trusting anybody in this offense. Breece Hall, no thanks. Dalvin Cook, no thanks. Obviously, Zach Wilson, no thanks. But now, Garrett Wilson, unfortunately, it's hard for me to trust him. So, yeah, against the Kansas City Chiefs, I think this is going to get one-sided pretty quickly. I think even though in garbage time, like you said, you liked a lot of targets there, but just like I laid out, 21 targets, only 11 receptions. So it's he's getting maybe 50% of his catches there, roughly, right? So I stay away from Garrett Wilson this week. It's a tough It's a tough sit this week, but I think it'll benefit you more to sit.
See, but that's the interesting difference between our two. Apparently, this is a sign for difference. That's the interesting difference between our
Tad
two.
Is doing the rock symbol as he's doing.
You know what this is? You know what this is? I'll really quickly tell the story. This is our high school football sign when I was trying to play football. This was our goal line sign.
Keyword trying.
Coronado. Oh, well, yeah. Once I broke my back, that very quickly stopped. But no, it was, I think that's the key difference is again, you could see the chemistry building between Bryce Young and Adam Thielen. There is zero chemistry going on with this Jets offense. It literally looks like they're just
Jets offense, like a Jets team.
It looks like
disintegrating. Yeah.
Oh God, what's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre at Leatherface. It looks like Leatherface trying to like put it together or just like we'll stitch it there. And it's just like there's no coherence to this offense. And by the way, I did the math. That's 8.8 yards a catch.
Yeah, it's
That's
not
bad. That's really, really bad. So no, honestly, if I had to come up with a comparison for Garrett Wilson, especially within this episode, he's the Joe Burrow of the wide receivers. That's a big name that I just don't trust anymore. Don't drop him. I'm not saying drop him yet. Give it like 2 or 3 weeks. I may get to that point. But for now, he's a pure bench rider. And just like, honest to God, I would start Adam Thielen over Garrett Wilson right now. No question.
Bench Rider, is that like the knockoff for Ghost Rider?
Yeah. So instead of the ghost skull, it's just the skull of Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Wow, that's a knock on Ryan Fitzpatrick. I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
He wrote a lot of benches. I was sorry, who's a famous bench rider? You try to think of one. Oh, I got a good one.
You got a good one?
Chase Daniel.
Chase Daniel's a very good one. Tyra Taylor.
Oh, that's a good one. Matt Castle.
Matt Castle's a good one. But overall, I think the one thing though, Tad, I will say, and I think this sort of capitalized on the fact that it's like, don't drop this guy. If perchance, once again, Garrett Wilson was somehow able to break out a huge play, he's able to score a touchdown, and he gets you a good amount of points, and he proves me wrong, this is where you need to trade him then. Because this is not going to continue all season.
Capitalize on that good week.
Exactly. So it's like capitalize on the fact that it's like, okay, he performed well against the Kansas City Chiefs. It's like this guy can still do it with Zach Wilson under center. Imagine if they trade for Kirk Cousins or something like that. It's like he'll get that much better. So take advantage of that if he does go off this week. But if he doesn't, unfortunately, it's going to be hard for you to trade the guy too. But definitely keep him because there's a potential that he could reclimate himself, like I said, depending if they do decide to eventually upgrade at the quarterback position, move on from Zach Wilson, but we'll see about that. But 100%, we can't stress this enough. If he goes off, find a way to trade him off your roster.
100%. It's funny because that reminded me of a conversation, and we brought him up several times on this podcast that I've had with a former coworker of mine, is Jason Davis, because he actually started Sam Darnold last week. He's like, I love that. Well, I should have laughed at this, but he's just like, I just need Bryce Young to be hurt for 3 more months. And I just texted him this morning, like, well, you're SOL, buddy. He's just like, I know. And we got in this conversation about like, well, who are the Jets going to go for? Because he was like, well, they should trade for Darnold. I'm like, I don't think the Panthers are going to let him go. It seems
wait. Sam Darnold is not on the Panthers.
Or not Sam Darnold. Sorry, I got my 4 teams mixed up. Andy Dalton. And I was like, I think they want like an experienced veteran mentor for Bryce Young. They both wore 14. That's an excusable mishap. But so he's like, well, who else did they take? I was saying Tyler Heineke.
That's disrespect to a former TCU player, man. Come on.
I mean, I am respecting him. That's what I'm saying.
You're disrespecting him because you're just comparing him to Sam Darnold at 14. Just 2 similar number 14 quarterbacks. Like, come on.
Sam Darnold's not terrible.
I don't think he's not terrible either. I'm just saying that's just like as much of a bias that you have for TCU. Just compared to just Sam Darnold. Just I'm saying.
No. Apparently, if Brock Purdy goes down, we're all screwed. So I don't know. Just your opinion, I guess. But anyway, my point being is they have very limited. I think this is the Jets' whole problem is they have a very limited scope of where to go from here. But there are interesting names out there. Taylor Heineke. I don't know why they're not trying to trade. Like, offer a 5th for Heineke because I think he is way better than Zach. I'm calling it at this point. I was way wrong on Zach Wilson. Maybe my worst NFL draft take of all time. I will own that at this point. Zach Wilson sucks. So, like, Taylor Heineke, go for him. It was funny because Mr. Davis is a Bears fan, and he was like, really, this guy? And I'm like, dude, he's better than what they got. Mitch Trubisky is still sitting there in Pittsburgh.
True. Very true.
So I think another key part of that is Garrett Wilson. If they do get a new quarterback, then you just know because that media wheel needs to spin, and yes, we are part of that, is they're going to talk up Garrett Wilson. I was like, oh, can his production go up? Maybe you can capitalize on that talk too. Because there's no way. There's absolutely, maybe this clip will age horribly. cannot believe the Jets are going to go the next, what is it? Let me do the math real quick. 13 weeks with Zach Wilson. There's just no way that's going to happen. I cannot imagine that.
I can't imagine it either, but I mean, we're sort of living in that future right now. So I mean, we'll see how it all plays out. So interesting situation in New York there for sure. Tad, let's get to the tight ends here. Who do you got here week 4 as a start or is it for me?
Well, speaking of bus, I'm not actually that embarrassed on this one because everyone, well, I shouldn't say everyone, most people thought this guy was going to be good. I'm not saying physically or as a player he's not good, but my God, this fit is such a terrible. I think he just has such a bad break in terms of he was drafted by a certain coach. Another coach came in, and that coach just doesn't really care about tight ends. Kyle Pitts may be one of the biggest NFL draft busts of the last couple years.
Yeah, that's a tough situation for sure. Both him and Drake London, like, I don't know what's going on there. They're just not
London, I don't blame as much. That's more of a quarterback situation. I think Pitts is more of a like system situation, if that makes sense. Like, even if they had, healthy Aaron Rodgers in there, I really don't like, because you got to remember, that's the whole reason not Delaney Walker, Jonnu Smith left Tennessee is because Jonnu Smith got frustrated. He was like, look, dude, I'm good. But to Arthur Smith, he was like, yeah, but we need you as a blocker.
Yeah.
And he just got frustrated because he's like, I'm not a blocker. I'm a tight end. Like, I'm a receiver as well. And Arthur Smith's like, nah, we're just going to run it like 40 times a game. Yeah. And that's exactly what's happening in Atlanta right now is that, Kyle Pitts, whenever he is utilized, does make the most of it. He scored 8.7 points last week. He's productive when he's used. The problem is his usage is so low, he can never really be that truly productive. So, sure. Look, I'm not saying Kyle Pitts is a bad player. I'm just saying I think he went to the way wrong team. Mm-hmm. So, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. So, basically, Evan Ingram, bench him this week. Evan Ingram. I just gave away my comparison. Kyle Pitts, bench him this week.
Like I said, keep your takes shorter now.
I'm
like
you need to
less talking is better for you at this hour.
Place. Kyle Pitts, bench him this week against the Jaguars, especially because that is at U.S. time, 9 a.m. local game against London, and I hate playing fantasy players for London games. I never trust them. So not only is it an international game, but Kyle Pitts has been struggling, so bench him. But I think keep an eye out because I don't think he'll be traded. But next year or 2 years from now, I think he'll find himself on a new team, and then he'll finally have the breakout season where we're like, okay, here's the guy we've been waiting for, and that's where my Evan Ingram comparison comes in because that's exactly what happened to Ingram in New York to Jacksonville, Kyle Pitts to Indianapolis.
And I think it's a very apt comparison too, because you look at Kyle Pitts' rookie season, just like Evan Ingram's rookie season, they both were able to sort of go off. And then you expected that trend to continue as the seasons went along. But so far, it hasn't been happening with Kyle Pitts. And the same thing happened with Evan Ingram. Just like you said, Evan Ingram finally eventually signed with Jacksonville Jaguars. He had a sensational season last year. So maybe that's all Kyle Pitts needs to wait for.
This year too.
As soon as free agency sort of hits, he sort of leaves. He finds a system that is better suited to utilize his skill set, not just in blocking, but definitely as a receiver. Because, Tad, that was sort of like our draft comparison with him. He's a glorified receiver, very similar to like your Travis Kelce's, your Jimmy Graham's. It's like just he's a guy who's a glorified receiver. And that's what you sort of want in an offense, especially the modern day type of offense that you're seeing in the NFL too. So we'll see, but yeah, I 100% agree with you. It's hard to start him as well, especially as such a big name, probably a tight end that went as probably the third or fourth tight end off the board in your fantasy draft. And now to see him just, getting maybe a few big plays, but that's about it. Has he even scored this year, Tad? I don't think he has, right?
I'm on it, but I will say 8.7 points was his season high total. 8.7. So, again, it's because with Arthur Smith's offense, it's one of those things where they try to hide their quarterback, right? Like Desmond Ridder has actually done a better job than I expected of him, but it's one of those things where it's just, he doesn't depend on the quarterback to run this offense. And that's what's so frustrating. And this is why I told you guys. And again, I will admit I was wrong. Bijan Robinson is doing much better in this offense than I thought. But with that said, this is why I told you look out for Tyler Algier as well, because he runs he being Arthur Smith runs such a run heavy offense that it's basically like it's an offense from the 1980s. This is the Cowboys offense with Emmitt Smith. If you look at Troy Aikman's stats, he actually really didn't throw all that much because they just ran it all the time with Aikman. So ultimately, I think that the Falcons are just going to keep depending on the running backs, and all the receivers and their quarterback are just going to be fantasy irrelevant as a result. So looking at the stats, oh man, this is rougher than I thought. Week 1, 2 receptions, 44 yards, 0 touchdowns. Week 2, 2 receptions, 15 yards, 0 touchdowns. Did okay. Week 3, 5 receptions, 41 yards, 0 touchdowns. He's yet to score.
Yeah, I think as soon as you said 8.76 or whatever you said was the season high, like that means he did score. Like, I mean, that's usually if you score a touchdown, that means
that's half PPR. That's why he was so high.
Yeah, and you're flirting with the double-digit points if you score a touchdown. But yeah, the fact that you said 8 point whatever you said was the high season high or whatever, that means he did score. Yeah, so it's just like, yeah, it's tough. It's tough for sure. Right, so but I'm gonna
if I have Kyle Pitts, who do I bench him for?
Yeah, I think we sort of talked about this in our waiver wire episode.
You're double dipping. This isn't fair. You're double dipping.
I think it's pretty obvious, though.
It's the Seinfeld episode of like, did you just dip the chip again?
But I think it's very apt here because I think it totally works because I'm going to say start Gerald Everett, the tight end with the Los Angeles Chargers, because they're playing the Las Vegas Raiders. We already talked about like this is a very good situation for the Chargers to sort of reestablish themselves and be a sort of powerhouse in the AFC again, where we're really questioning them through, like I said, through 3 weeks. Even though they won last week, it was like they very much could have lost that game at the very final seconds too. Like, I mean, Minnesota had a lot of time management issues on that very final drive. So, I mean, that's part of the reason why they lost too. So, yeah, the Chargers are not feeling all that great, even though they're 1-2 as opposed to 0-3 like the Minnesota Vikings are. So you look at this game, unfortunately, like we talked about, Mike Williams is out for the entire season with that torn ACL. There's going to be some players that are going to have to step up here. I think Gerald Everett is going to be one of those guys. You look at Gerald Everett last year, they were utilizing him quite a bit. Unfortunately, he dealt with some injuries, so that's why he wasn't able to sustain his, success all season long. But I think now with this sort of opportunity is sort of striking for him, I think he'll make the most of it. And you look at the Raiders, like, I mean, they don't have a good defense. Like, I don't understand. They have not fixed their defense.
That's the nicest way you could put that.
They haven't fixed their defense in like probably 7 years at least. Like, I mean, I don't understand what they're doing with that defense. They're not.
They had that one wild touchdown against the Patriots. Was that the Patriots? Who was that against?
Yeah, it was the Patriots where they caught the
pass
back or whatever. No, I know what you're talking about. I know exactly what you're talking about. But yeah, it's just that was more of a fluke than actually them playing good defense. Like
the fact that was their best defensive play in the last since like 2000
probably
tells you something.
Yeah, and believe me, I love Max Crosby, but unfortunately, his talent is going to waste there.
Request a trade. Request a trade tonight.
But anyway, so Tad, talking about this terrible Las Vegas defense, they have given up 7 passing touchdowns through the air so far in 2023, which is tied for the 3rd worst in the league. I think just unfortunately, the Chargers are going to be overmatched for them, and they're going to have a lot of opportunities to score. A lot of people are going to get involved. I bet you Keenan Allen's going to have another fantastic game. Josh Palmer's going to get involved. Here's one thing. I think Quentin Johnson's going to score in this game. He's going to have probably like 2 receptions, but one of them's going to go for a touchdown.
Something for the love of God.
For a touchdown. I'm sort of seeing it here. I'm predicting it here, but I also think who's going to score a touchdown. I like Gerald Everett to score a touchdown in this game, so I very much like him as a start against a very, very terrible Raiders defense.
Please God, let UJ actually do something this season. My God.
All right, Tad, let's move on to the defenses and the kickers. We're not going to spend a ton of time here, Tad. So give me your kicker and your defense, your starts and your sits for both position. What do you like here?
All right, so this is a rare chance where I'm actually going to start with the kicker first. I am saying start Jason Sanders, the Miami Dolphins kicker, this week.
Start.
Now, this was actually very surprising. He's only rostered in 11% of ESPN leagues. So I kind of looked into why, and it's not honestly too surprising to actually look at the stats where he's only the 13th best kicker in terms of total points scored. But, and this is what I talked about last week, where you had that kicker where their offense is just so good that they score too much, and all you get are those 1 point extra points rather than field goals. However, I found an interesting stat. So the Buffalo Bills have allowed nearly 6 yards of carry to opposing running backs, but when it comes to the pass defense, they are among the top tier, not like quite like like elite defenses, but they're one of the better ones against the pass.
Sure.
So I think there's a good chance that the Dolphins kind of like get into territory, and then when they can no longer stretch the field with Tyreek Hill, all of a sudden you're a little shortened, and that offense kind of stalls, not within the red zone, but on the other side of the field, which leads to more field goals. I like Jason Sanders a lot here. On the opposite side of the coin, I don't like the Buffalo Bills defense. They just put up, and here's why, because I know a lot of people are going to go, wow, yeah, don't like the defense against the offense that just put up 70. No shit, Sherlock. But here's the point. Is the Buffalo Bills on the flip side of the coin also just put up 19 points against the offense. And I know they're the Washington Commanders, but I can totally see this situation playing out in a lot of leagues of like, I know they're playing the Dolphins, but they're really good. I don't want to drop them. I'll take the flyer. Don't do it. Don't do the thing. I'm not saying drop them, but find the one guy you don't really want on your team and put the Bills on your bench and drop that dude. Because here's the problem, is exactly like what I said. The Bills defense is very susceptible to the run. Amir, you as a 49ers fan, and you guys are identical teams. My God, I really am hoping for a Dolphins 49ers Super Bowl, because that will be absolutely ridiculous.
That'd be electric.
That'd be insane. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. The Dolphins are running the exact same offense the 49ers are.
It's pretty close to it. I mean, I think they're built a little bit more on speed, obviously, but just like, yeah, there's a lot of very similar things and the concepts that they're using that Mike McDaniel learned from Kyle Shanahan and also Mike Shanahan, because he's under the same coaching staff back in Washington as well. So,
and what does that offense run on?
The zone running scheme and West Coast.
It runs on the run.
Runs on the run, sure, for sure.
So the whole point being is, if you're susceptible to run, I don't have a lot of faith in this defense. So even if you're holding on to the Bills defense, I'm not telling you to drop them, but I'm definitely telling you to bench them this week. So I say bench the Bills, start Jason Sanders.
Not bad. Not bad. I'm going to go with the sit at the kicker position here, Tad. I'm going to go with Matt Prater, the kicker for the Arizona Cardinals. They're playing the San Francisco 49ers this week. Yeah, say what you want, but the Cardinals have been very scrappy these past 3 weeks, and that sort of scrappiness led to an upset, leading wire to wire for the Cardinals. They led that game entirely against the Dallas Cowboys last week, so I mean, that's impressive on them. They were able to get the upset victory, but I think seeing them for 3 weeks, the Niners are going to be a little bit more prepared. This is a divisional game. They have to stack wins within the division, and so I bet you they're not going to take the Cardinals lightly. They're really going to put it on them, and unfortunately, that just means there's not going to be field goal opportunities for Matt Prater. Maybe 1 or 2 if they're lucky, but I just don't see a lot of kicking opportunities for Matt Prater. So I think sit him this week against the San Francisco 49ers.
You're seeing my start from last week.
I'm sorry there. But I'm going to flip it. I'm going to go with the start here, Tad. I know you started talking about this game earlier, but I'm going to go with start the Cincinnati Bengals against the Tennessee Titans this week. So the Titans offense, Tad. Oh, the Titans offense is awful. And that's honestly being generous.
Wait, they have an offense?
Yeah, that's honestly, that's sort of what it's like, because they're averaging, Tad, 15 points per game through 3 weeks, and that's tied for 3rd worst in the NFL. They're tied with the Las Vegas Raiders. So that's why I don't have much hope for the Raiders against the Los Angeles Chargers. When you're in a conversation with the Raiders as far as being bad at something, that tells you how bad you are right now. So yeah, I don't like the Titans offense right now. Their offensive line is giving them a lot of issues. Ryan Tannehill is getting sacked a ton. Tad, back-to-back games, Ryan Tannehill has been sacked 5 times. You look at the game.
Honestly, I'm shocked it's that low.
Exactly. And in total, he has taken the 2nd most sacks in the league overall. You look at what the Bengals did against the Rams on Monday night. They had 5. Sorry, not 5. They had 6 sacks against the Los Angeles Rams. They also forced 2 turnovers as well. So, I mean, that was sort of like a bounce back game for them, both on offense and defense. Jamar Chase had a fantastic game. I know you said Joe Burrow was sort of like iffy, sort of dealing with the calf issues, which you talked about. But I think, put that aside, I think this defense is going to play really well against a very awful, terrible Titans offense. And so, yeah, I like the Cincinnati Bengals defense to get a lot of points for you. Maybe force a couple of turnovers, possibly a defensive touchdown. We'll see about that. But yeah, I like them to get a lot of sacks as well. And like I said, maybe force a turnover or 2 to really get you a lot of good points. So start the Bengals defense this week.
Gutsy pick. Got back. It's just like that offense could force them in a lot of bad positions, but I will help you out a little here. This does have this reeks of a feel of like this is the Bengals game of like we are good, we are back, we're fine. Like that really has that kind of feel to it, especially because Joe Burrow, again, with that right calf injury, it will slowly start to heal. He will be back. So I don't think the Bengals are out of the running yet. It's going to be tough for them because of the slow start, but I really am not counting them out yet. In fact, when my buddy was in Vegas, I almost told him to put money on the Bengals winning the division because it's the same thing as when you remember that old Peyton Manning game where he threw like 4 picks against the Chiefs when he was with the Broncos. I put money on the Broncos winning the Super Bowl that weekend. I won like $200 because you gotta bet, like, because it's such a talented team. They gotta bounce back unless injuries happen. Real quick, this is a genuine question. I was trying to look it up while you were talking. Who has the most, or what quarterback has taken the most sacks in the NFL?
I don't remember actually.
My guess is Fields.
Fields is a very strong possibility. Now that I think about it, that's a very strong one. Yeah, I do remember Sam Howell.
Oh. See, he is good. He just gets pressured too much.
I do remember now. Yeah, it was Sam Howell.
Look what they've done to my boy.
Oh, gosh, there. But, guys, that is our waiver wire picks for this week. Unfortunately, Tad, we're kind of pushing up against it here. But
we're good.
The biggest thing, though, is that, we're always going to try and give you our sports bets every week. But unfortunately, like I said, we're pushing up against it here. But I think that is the benefit of subscribing to our social media handles. You see the ticker coming right down below. You got us on Twitter there. You got me at @TheSide23. You got Tad TheSide94. You got the show handle @TheSideGuys. And, of course, on Instagram @TheSideGuys. So, like we talked about, we couldn't get to our sports bets on the actual episode, but we got you covered with all the bets in our graphic that drops every single week in our social media handles. So make sure you're following us there. And also, the benefit of following us is interact with us because, if you interact with us and you ask us questions when it comes to your fantasy roster, where it's like you need some start sit decisions, you need some trade help, you need some help on who to pick up off the waiver wire. We are here to help you with all your individual leagues. Doesn't matter what type of question it is. Doesn't matter what type of league you're in. Me and Tad play in so many different leagues that we got you covered and we can give you advice.
Don't even get me started on that goddamn Grim Reaper league. That is going so badly.
So, guys, we could give you a ton of advice across all leagues. So make sure you're interacting with us. We are here to help you out for sure. Help you win your fantasy leagues. We're going to stress that every single episode. Interact with us. We want to help you win your leagues and your various championships. Wherever you listen to your podcast, make sure you subscribe so you're always up to date with our podcast. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. And I sort of gave him a shout out earlier, but I'm going to give him another shout out here. Make sure you're subscribing to our parent network at LEFB Network. Got a lot of great content when it comes to the Rams and the Chargers at the NFL level and the Trojans and the Bruins at the college level. So, guys, there's a lot of great content there. Give them a follow. Give them a subscribe. Everything and anything there. But, guys, to everybody who's already watching the videos, who's listening to our podcast, who's interacting with us on social media, who's reading our reading our graphics in our sports bets there for sure, and taking some bets too. Like we're probably winning a little bit of money there. We'll see exactly how it all pays out. But just guys, however you're supporting us, we really can't thank you enough.
So David Montgomery scored 3 touchdowns tonight.
He did, yeah.
So if you are playing David Montgomery, or if you have David Montgomery, you want to sell high because look, Jahmyr Gibbs, that he may be taking over later this season. If you want some trade advice here, some trade advice there, and we have some very loyal listeners and they know who they are, and thank you for continuing to hit us up. For trade advice or for waiver wire advice, even if it goes beyond the episode, I cannot stress that enough. If we don't talk about the guy that you're interested in, if you hit us up on Instagram, oh my God, that's the first time I've hit it so well. If you hit us up on Twitter, Instagram, or what's the other one?
Just Twitter and Instagram. That's all we got.
Okay. That's your job, so I'm not very good at this. But basically, if you hit us up on socials, we will. I tried, but if you hit us up, we will absolutely help you, and we will do everything in our power to make sure you win, as long as you're in our league, Al. But thank you, as always, so much for watching. Thank you so much, as always, for listening. Damn it,
viewing too.
Viewing, watching, listening, whatever. Thank you for giving us all of your attention. And as always, everyone, please stay safe.